What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Whole bunch of stuff to talk about today, including Square Enix looking a little more at the Switch in terms of porting stuff over, but also modernizing it, not just moving it over without doing anything. And then we also found out that apparently you can beat Mario Odyssey without jumping. Well, at least kinda without jumping. You kinda had to trick the game a little bit, but today, let's get started. So Yusuke Masuda sat down with MCV and had an interview that was pretty standard, nothing too crazy, except they started talking about the Nintendo Switch, and of course, we've heard that Square is interested in the Switch heavily at this point after seeing the sales in Japan and then the rest of the world, but definitely in Japan because there seems like, well, the Japanese culture is all about the Switch and is buying it up in droves. And of course, Square has a bunch of games that would appeal to them with their RPG lineup. I mean, they have Final Fantasy and just a whole wealth of other games that most of us could probably name throughout the years. So, of course, they thought, why don't we bring some of those games back? And this was in the interview saying, one of our other big initiatives is to get as many of our past titles available via digital releases. Among the younger generations of gamers, you've got lots of people out there who may have heard of our past titles but have never had an opportunity to play them. So we think that program of porting and transferring the older titles over to newer platforms such as the Switch is very important so that people get that awareness of our back catalog. Just straight ports isn't cutting it. We need to update those and modernize them to make something that works for modern gamers too. Now that sounds actually pretty awesome. We could see a bunch of older games from Square's back catalog show up on the Switch that would work really well, especially RPGs work really well with these type of systems where you can kind of put it in sleep mode and then come right back to it. It really makes things like if you just want to grind a few levels out while you're maybe waiting for a bus to show up or you're on the train or who knows. You can kind of play it and then put it in sleep mode and go about your day. RPGs, while you're grinding, when you're sitting in front on a couch in front of TV, can get a little tiresome, a little boring at times. So it's nice to be able to have that option while you're on the go. But the big thing here is we can see a lot of their games that are in the back catalog that no one has really played before, especially nowadays. I mean, sure, you can get the older Final Fantasies. You look at stuff like Legend of Dragoon is a great example that I was looking at. Like, that would be really neat to have, like, I guess, fixed up a bit. I don't really know how much they want to go into revamping these titles, right? Maybe they just want to move them over, maybe clean up the visuals a little bit, change some of the controls around to be more modernized, and really at that point, just push them out the door and put them on the Switch. It's also going to come down to pricing. I don't want them to charge $40 for something like Legend of Dragoon, but like 10 to 15, that makes a lot of sense. Get Final Fantasy 6 though, take 3 or 6, whatever you want to call it, take that and actually modernize, maybe even revamp that to a degree. I would actually pay a little more for something like that if they spend some more time on it, but it shows that, yes, Square is very interested in the Switch, heavily interested. It seems like a great place to put some of their older games that they remaster and just start showing up on the eShop with those. I would like that a lot. I'm sure a lot of people want some of the newer AAA stuff, and I'm sure they're looking into that, but I mean, man, the back catalog of Square is massive, so sure, bring those over to the Switch. Next up, let's talk about Goldeneye a little bit. Remember 007 Goldeneye on the Nintendo 64? I'm sure if you had a 64 and you really were into like the multiplayer style games, you had played that, or you probably owned it, or at least you rented it a few times. One of the best multiplayer games next to things like Mario Kart, Mario Party, of course. Most of us had Goldeneye, and then we probably got Perfect Dark because it was similar in style. But Goldeneye was always the game you'd go to for like split screen, 4-player shooting action. It was so much fun. I even like the single player was great. Sure, the frame rate got bad. We all understand, but we loved it and we remember it fondly. Well, what if I told you it may have just got a little easier for that game to show up on current gen systems? Now, this report first showed up on the ZeroReview.com where they talked about how really the trademark and the copyright that Nintendo had, because really Goldeneye is an interesting situation. We almost had a remaster on the Xbox. We were this close. In fact, there's full footage of this game running and it looks cool. It's 60 frames per second, it's 1080p. It's basically like the Perfect Dark port that they did for the 360 later on the Xbox Live Arcade where it had full online, and it's probably the best way to play Perfect Dark. It works really, really well. Well, apparently Nintendo's trademark has, well, expired. It's been 20 years, so what they have seen, the ZeroReview.com is really reporting, well, it's expired, and now it's really up to what Microsoft, and another one that owns it at this point is Eon Productions, who has really the Bond name, the 007 name, and it would have to go through them, but apparently we could probably see that game that was almost done, it was close enough to where it was playable, you could see that show up on something like the Xbox or even the PC. Now, the reason, of course, Microsoft has some say over it is because they own Rare, who had a little bit of ownership to it, at least because they designed the older Goldeneye game. And here they are now. Microsoft has an opportunity, if everything goes to plan here, because Nintendo doesn't seem very interested in doing anything. In fact, the reason, according to many sources, that older game did not come out is because Microsoft and Nintendo could not come to some kind of agreement to release it on the Xbox. Well, now, if Nintendo's not in the picture, I'm sure Microsoft could probably figure it out with Eon Productions here, and they could maybe release it. I would love to see Goldeneye come back in some way, shape, or form. On the PC, on the Xbox, doesn't matter. I think a lot of us would at least like to have the option of a remastered, more modernized Goldeneye, especially if it uses 2 different sticks and everything. That would be really cool. Let me know what you guys think about Goldeneye, though, especially if you played it. I know a lot of us would do things like try to hide half the screen so we wouldn't screen look and everything. I feel like that game would be awesome to have online and really to play back through it like 60 frames per second, even 1080p somewhere in there. It'd be really neat. Let me know what you guys think about all this. Next up, let's touch on Bayonetta 2 very quick. Some more information came out about this. As you guys know, I'm looking forward to Bayonetta 1 and 2 and especially 3. But we were kind of wondering, well, is it going to all be on one cartridge? They tell us no, there's going to be a download code. To me, that means that Bayonetta 2 is probably going to be on the cart like we saw. It is. And then you download Bayonetta 1. If you get the special edition that I believe is available in Japan right now, maybe parts of Europe, you do get a separate cart for Bayonetta 1. But we got to look at the file size over on Amazon Japan. And it actually is smaller than the Wii U version. It comes in just over 12 gigabytes, according to Amazon, whereas the Wii U version was 14 gigabytes. So it's not massive. I mean, still, that's half the Switch's internal storage. So yeah, get that SD card ready, like we keep saying. But it's interesting that it would be smaller. Maybe the different compression techniques or something make this work better. I'm not sure. I would have liked to see Nintendo fit both of those on one cartridge, and it tells me that Nintendo themselves are not ready to go near that 32 gigabyte cartridge, so it must be a pretty large jump in their margins if that's the case. You know, the cost must really be that much higher. I mean, we have companies like 2K not even wanting to go near a 16 gigabyte cart, so I mean, yeah, what's that 32 gig cost? In our last bit of news, let's talk about Mario Odyssey and how you can apparently beat it without jumping. Now, if you don't know, after you finish the game, you do have a way to check your jump counter. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but there is a way to check how many times you have jumped overall, which was kind of a cool idea because, of course, you want to know how many times you do all kinds of things, how many times you die, how many coins have you collected, and how many times you pressed the jump button. And in this case, they managed to beat it without ever pressing the jump button, at least according to the game. Now, this was done by Game Champ 3000, and they managed to figure out a lot of stuff in this video. This video was very entertaining, by the way, so that is also down in the description. Make sure you check it out. It was such a fun watch overall. It was really well put together. But for the most part, they figured out a couple workarounds for different parts of the game, which was probably the most interesting to many people who watched it. Now, they did pull from the speedrunning community at times to get around really problem areas, I will say that. 2D areas where you have to jump. Well, you pretty much have to bypass that completely, and they figured all of that out. They also figured out some very odd parts of the game where apparently talking to an NPC counts as a jump being registered in the game, which I would have never figured, and neither did they, because they had to try to complete it a couple times while they figured all of this out. They even had to go as far as to do co-op mode to get around certain parts. So it was pretty fun to watch, and when they do eventually, as you've seen online and different reporting, they did eventually get it to where it was 0 times jumped at the end. Their video does include spoilers, so I'll warn you now, but if you don't mind, maybe you've beaten the game like I'm sure a lot of us have at this point, unless you're waiting for Christmas to get Mario Odyssey, in which case don't go watch it. But it is possible. You can beat the game without the game ever registering a jump at least in its memory and in the way it sees a jump. Kind of cool to see. Again, great job. That video was a lot of fun to watch. Good job, Game Champ 3000. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for Newswave today. Make sure you hit that like button if you enjoyed it, guys. It really helps out. If you didn't hit the dislike button, leave a comment down below on any of the stuff we talked about today. Let me know what you think about someone beating Mario Odyssey without apparently hitting the jump button according to the game. I thought it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I clicked on it, watched the video, and had a lot of fun doing it. It's not something I'm going to try out, but it's kind of cool to know that, yeah, you can beat the game without ever jumping. And also let me know what you think about the Goldeneye. Possibly, I mean, the trademark might be easier to get to now. Maybe at this point, Microsoft can work it out easier without Nintendo in the mix. If that is the case, we haven't seen anything about Nintendo re-upping anything. So yeah, we could see that possible prototype footage, that leaked footage that came out. that could become a real thing. And I'm pretty excited to possibly see a remaster of GoldenEye, but of course, it's speculation at this point. But man, I would love to see it come back. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on that and any other stories talked about today. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.